This 10-minute video shows how you can rewind your filament in no time at all with the help of my filament rewinder and spool holder. In the example, filament from the Bavaria-based company Bavaria Filament is wound from a cardboard roll onto the Filament spool. The video shows the entire process in real time, including the mistakes I made and corrected. Firstly, the coil is placed on the spool reel. Incidentally, this is an extended version of the spool reel that belongs to the original Prusa MMU2. We push the axle through and do tighten the screw, but not too much. Next, we set the spool brake correctly. The spool brake is important to ensure that the filament is always under tension during the spooling process. The coil brake is adjusted using 2 screws. When we screw the screws in, the braking effect is loosened. When we unscrew them, it is increased accordingly. As I use a cardboard roll and this rubs heavily on the felt of the brake shoe, I have to release the brake. I do this by gradually turning the 2 screws a little further in alternately. Now it seems to fit. I will now prepare the empty coil next. To do this, I click in the 2 coil caps. I orientate myself on the groove of the coil and insert the corresponding edge of the coil cap there first. I do the same with the second cap. The spool is placed on the rewinder with the cap with the round bends. The through axle is prepared next. It is pushed through the coil holder onto the rewinder. Finally, the quick release axle is tightened slightly using a suitable Allen key. Oops, here I can point out a mistake that is easy to make. I have attached the spool incorrectly. The filament is now coming from below. Ideally, however, it should run into the filament guide of the rewinder on one level. I will therefore turn the spool round. Firstly, I move the filament guide to the correct position at the front end of the spool by turning the spool with the ratchet switched off. The filament is passed between the clamping rollers and threaded into the PTFE tube. If the end of the filament is not quite straight, I use a screwdriver to help. Now I attach the filament very tightly to the front edge with an adhesive strip. I adjust the pressure force of the coil brake once again. For the first attempt, I put on the crank, especially for this demo. You can of course save yourself the trouble and win the first turns by turning the coil directly. I now attach the spool holder loosely to the rewinder. And another mistake. Make sure that you secure the filament well in the spool. Now you can carefully apply the first coils. I press the first layers together again and again until the layers hold themselves by their own tension. Please do not forget to reactivate the ratchet so that the tension of the layers is maintained. Now I remove the crank and replace it with the flexible shaft or the cordless screwdriver. I recommend operating the cordless screwdriver in slow gear. It's quick anyway. The whole process will only take about 3 minutes. So let's start slowly and gradually increase the speed. As already shown in my video on rewinding, there are always small imperfections like this one. This means that the clean layer pattern is not maintained until the end. Nevertheless, the layers remain evenly wound throughout. One of the reasons for this uncleanliness is the final cable routing through the PTFE hose. As you can see here, it keeps deviating to the side. I am still experimenting with other solutions, such as stiffening the hose or a joint in the feed. I am always grateful for ideas. I have increased the speed slightly, at the same time the source coil becomes lighter and lifts slightly. Please pay attention to this. As you can see here, we have reached the end of the source coil. So I slowly reduce the speed. Here you can see very clearly how the ratchet and spool brake work well together and how the filament always remains under tension. That was it. The whole thing took about 3 minutes. Now screw on the through axle. Pull it out. Pull out the coil holder. Remove the coil. Clamp the filament in place. Remove the spool caps. Finished.